Blue Devotion, and his opponent, Pieter Tubergen, playing Mono Black Devotion.
All right, so I'd say the defining matchup of the format here, Mono Blue versus Mono Black. I think if anything keeps down Mono Blue, this is one of the matchups that I think keeps it down a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my opinion, all these games have like a very different texture to them. Some games it looks like the Mono Black deck is especially dominant in the matchup, and some games it looks like the Mono Blue deck is especially dominant.
All right, well, we are underway. Pieter was on the play with no 1-drop. Osyp made a Cloudfin Raptor, but is now staring down a turn 2 Pack Rat on the play from Pieter, which is one of the weapons that Mono Black, certainly game 1, uses, can capitalize on very hard.
Right. An uncontested Pack Rat, especially on the play, one of the ways that I commonly see Mono Black Devotion win these games.
So we'll see. Pieter has a strategic choice here. He can either play a 3rd land and a Night Veil Spectre, or he can begin to make rats. He has shown his hand as he discards the Night Veil Spectre to make a Pack Rat, swinging 2 damage.
So Pieter off to an excellent start here, but one of the ways to beat Pack Rat is to fly over it, and Osyp's start is conducive to doing that. As you see, a turn 3 Night Veil Spectre as well. So Osyp has some of the tools that we generally see one needs to be able to erase a Pack Rat in this position.
Right, so he knocks Pieter down to 16. At some point, Osyp's going to need some sort of removal or some way to block. The Pack Rat curve goes 2 damage, then 6 damage, then 12. So it does actually, it does represent that turn 5 kill if Osyp's not blocking at all. So 4th land for Pieter.
And that Mutavault mucks up the equation as well.
Mutavault makes it even. Yeah, Mutavault definitely messes with things. So we see a discard and an activation. This is going to be a pair of 4/4 swinging in and putting Osyp down to 10, and that'll represent a lethal attack as early as next turn. And that's kind of the scary part of Pack Rat here, is just how quickly it deals damage.
Yeah. Innocuous seeming at first, but quickly becomes lethal.
All right, so we are back on Osyp's turn. He has Pieter at 16. He does have some of the typical advantages in the matchup. He has a Night Veil Spectre that could connect, but he needs to find a way to survive while pressing damage.
Yeah, Master of Waves uncontested here would give him some wiggle room. Possible that things like Rapid Hybridization, like Clonogryph can buy a little bit of time, but back is definitely against the wall. Again, facing a lethal attack next turn.
Yeah, Master Waves really is the card that he needs here, isn't it?
I can't think of much else that will make enough of the potential for a long-term impact. There's other cards that Osyp could have here to buy him some time, but buying time is not really a game plan against Pack Rat.
Yeah, so he does have Master. We see he has Bident in his hand as well. And we'll see what he chooses to go with. Bident probably won't be a card this game.
No, I don't think. The game's going to be over way too fast for that to make an impact.
Yeah. Master would make 6 creatures on the current board, but he would be pretty much dead to a kill spell if he goes that route.
Yeah, he would have a huge edge in the event that Pieter did not have a removal spell for it, but he does die if that's his primary game plan.
Yeah, well, what are his other options here then? He can try to chump and race, kind of, right?
Right, try to bleed out removal with other threats to open up Master of Waves, lining uncontested, but there's not a lot of other paths that he can pursue here.
All right. It looks like he's not going to swing with the Night Veil this turn. He did make a land drop pre-attack, which to me makes me think he's not swinging Night Veil.
Seems unlikely.
Yeah, you'd want to do that before making a land drop. And he's going to play Cloudfin and Thassa.
Okay.
Now the Thassa will be activated. So actually with Thassa, it means he does have a blocker that can kill Pack Rats. Probably just for this turn. It's going to be pretty... Once again, that kill spell, if Pieter has it, will turn off Thassa's Devotion.
Mm-hmm. But it's possible, this play might compel Pieter to use a removal spell to shut off Thassa's Devotion. And then the path might be clear for Master Waves to actually resolve and stay in play.
Right, it means that Pieter wouldn't be pack-ratting that turn. And we'll see how many creatures Osyp chooses to swing with, whether or not he wants to play around that removal spell.
Yeah, this is very complicated because, of course, Osyp wants to try to end the game quickly here. Time is not on his side, but he also appears to be trying to map out this plan of bleeding out potentially bleeding out a removal spell. If not, he's in a great position. If Pieter doesn't have a Hero's Downfall here or something to break up Devotion, Osip's in a great spot because the Master next turn is a ton of board presence, and he still gets to keep all of his flyers.
So he wants to swing enough damage that he can make chump blocks this turn, and then next turn have a lethal swing with Thassa plus cohorts. So this will be a swing for 6 in the air. Night Veil Spectre hits Underworld Connections, sure. Pieter's down to 10, which means that even if Pieter kills one of Osyp's creatures, thanks to Mutavault, if Osyp has the Devotion, like if he has a 1-mana card, he should still have a lethal attack next turn.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to make sure that he has a 10 power swing.
And there's a little rules nuance for those of you at home watching. If your Devotion count is at 5 or greater when Thassa enters play, it enters play as a creature, so it triggers Devotion. In the spots where it's not entering play live, in essence, it doesn't count as a creature and doesn't trigger cards like Cloudfin Raptor.
Right, and that's why Osyp played his lands pre-combat, is he wanted to play the Thassa pre-combat for extra damage, and he also wanted to play the Cloudfin pre-combat, so it got evolved by the Thassa. If he has enough lands in his play, the possibility to get a free land off Pieter's deck isn't very relevant, especially how fast this game is going.
Yep. The way that the Devotion cards work, the gods, how they enter play based on what the game state is a common source of confusion, so.
Yeah. The gods can be really confusing, you know, in the same way that, you know, you have to Essence Scatter one. There's a lot of rules nuances to them.
Right.
We see Hero's Downfall, and this was the removal spell we were worried about. It's going to hit Night Veil Spectre. That will turn Thassa back into an enchantment. But it means this attack from Pieter won't be lethal.
Yeah.
He can push 8 damage through, but not 10.
And Osyp could actually potentially make this less damage if he wanted to by sacking the Judge's Familiar, which could turn off Mutavault if Pieter doesn't have additional land this turn.
Yeah, so that really depends on what card is in Osyp's hand, and that's the play he's debating right now.
I mean, I would have to assume that if his plan is to win with Master of Waves here, he needs to not sack his Judge's Familiar, as he would have exactly 5 Devotion.
Yeah, well, also, Pieter's done a good job in not playing a land yet. It's disguising his hand a little bit. You know, if Pieter played a second land before making the Hero's Downfall, I don't think Osyp would be thinking about this play. Turns out he will not sacrifice the bird.
Now you see Master of Waves actually turns Thassa back on and gives Osyp exactly 10 damage on board.
All right, so now Pieter, he does have one more land. He can activate Mutavault. The Mutavault's tapped, so he actually can't swing with it. If he had another land and had left Mutavault up, this would be a lethal attack, wouldn't it?
He would be able to animate Mutavault, and then all the reds are 4/4s, and Osyp has 1 block. So 10, exact 10 comes across.
Yeah, so I think there was a slight miscalculation on Pieter's side here.
Yeah, it's possible that if he leaves Mutavault up instead of the Swamp, that might actually compel Osyp to use
this Judge's Familiar.
Yeah.
But that would be a free Judge's Familiar then,
right?
Right? Okay, so he's gonna make the swing. Right, but this swing isn't lethal because the Mutavault was not able to participate.
Well, it still represents a lethal attack, as
Right.
Pieter can turn it on, yes.
Yeah, the swing itself isn't lethal though. Osyp can survive thanks to this chump block. And this game could be in Osyp's favor. We'll see if he can turn on that Thassa and get the last point of damage across. Pieter does have a little bit of a surprise here. He does have a Pharika's Cure. That won't gain him 2 life though. It'll just almost certainly just take down Judge's Familiar.
Right. It's going to be hard for Osyp to swing with Mutavault and keep his board intact enough through this Pharika's Cure.
He would have to have Island into Night Veil Spectre in order to do that. If he went Island, Night Veil Spectre, activate Mutavault, then he would have exactly 10. I think that's the line he needs though. Right, because that would be enough to still have Devotion after losing Judge's Familiar. It'd be 5 from Thassa, 3 from Raptor, 2 from Mutavault. Would be enough. He doesn't have it. It looks like he has Master Waves and Frostburn Weird and Bident with no additional land. So it does not appear that Osyp has enough, He doesn't appear that he can press the win here. He doesn't have enough damage to swing, which means we'll likely see him just cast Master of Waves.
Well, in theory, the way the board is on board, Frostburn Weird is a kill here, but we know that that doesn't work because of Pieter's hand.
Right.
So now Osyp's debating if he has a different line he can take.
I don't think he does, unfortunately for him. No, he knows the
You can see the look on his face. He knows
that he's dead to a kill spell. Right. So that's going to go ahead and try for the win here, and Pharika's Cure will turn off Devotion. As long as he doesn't target Mutavault. Yeah, and he takes Judge's Familiar. And that should do it, because that'll turn off Thassa. Right, and this is why that play needed to be a land and a Night Veil, because then he could actually just sack the bird.
Right. So this is going to cause Devotion to get shut off. And now it says an Elementary has an untap and attack from Pieter.
Yeah, Pieter takes 5, goes to 5. That 5 missing points because Thassa was just an enchantment, and we'll be on to game 2. Pieter Tubergen up 1-0 over Osyp Lebedowicz.
Osyp fought gamely there. I mean, he did sculpt a very good game plan there, but that Pharika's Cure was just a little too much for him to overcome.
Yeah, the strength of that turn 2 Pack Rat on the play really can't be understated. Osyp had a lot of, I think he had a lot of the weapons that his deck does have game 1 to deal with it, but I think because he was on the draw instead of the play, it still wasn't actually enough.
And that Mutavault was a critical shifter in the damage race as well there for Pieter.
Right.
So going on to the sideboard here, Osyp has a pretty conventional looking mono blue Devotion sideboard. He has 4 Gainsay, 3 Dissolve, a Dispel and Negate, a Bident, a Jace, 2 Domestication, a Curse of the Swine, and a Rapid Hybridization. So I think that you're going to see probably the Bident come in as part of the blue deck's plan after board is to out-attrition the mono black deck to be able to just draw more cards and slog through the removal spells that way. You're also probably going to see some mixture of, say, the extra Rapid Hybridization, potentially, but probably not Curse of the Swine. Additional tools to fight over Pack Rat, as that's one of the easiest ways for mono black to run away with the game, as we saw there in the first game. And possibly Domestication as well, as it lines up very nicely against Night Veil Spectre.
Right. On the mono black side, he really just tries to kill everything after board. They do have Pharika's Cures and a Doomblade in their sideboard available to them. That's typically what's brought in this matchup. A lot of their cards are for other matchups. Erebos, Duress, Lifebane Zombie, Dark Betrayal. Typically not used here. I have seen people born in Dark Betrayal, though it's really quite narrow.
To fight over Lifebane.
To fight over just Night Veil Spectre.
Or Night Veil Spectre, rather. Lifebane Zombie, what I was going to mention, I know that Owen Turnwald, for example, is an advocate for bringing in Lifebane Zombie against Mono Blue Devotion because he feels the games after board are kind of damage racy. He wants to be a little bit more aggressive. So even though there's no targets in Osyp's deck for him to take with Lifebane Zombie, the mixture of a 3-power fear creature and getting the information on the Mono Blue player's hand, which often has a lot of tricks, possibly counter spells in it as well, he believes is very valuable as well.
Yeah, so pretty conventional board plans for both players. After board, how do you feel the matchup? Do you feel the matchup significantly changes for one deck?
I think mono black gets a little bit better. I think just there's so many mono blue hands that are just Thassa or bust, or Master Waves or bust, and Master Waves is really hard to get online against mono black, obviously. They have no end of removal. And so the mono blue deck often gets hands that are just a bunch of creatures that aren't terribly fast or resilient, and mono black just chews those draws up. Additionally, Pack Rat is so good against mono blue, and mono blue doesn't have a lot of great ways to answer the card. They do have Rapid Hybridization, which is okay, but giving them a 3/3 that early is not great, especially if they're bringing in Lifebane Zombie. They can actually start damage racing you and land early Desecration Demons, win the game that way. Cyclonic Rift can buy you a little bit of time, but again, you don't want a lot of these cards when you're trying to out-attrition them and grind through their removal. There's only so many bounce and removal spells you can add to your deck. And so I think the mono black deck just kind of structurally makes a little bit more sense to me in the matchup. They also get a bunch of free wins with Pack Rat, but the blue deck, it can be a little bit faster early on in the game, and definitely some draws that involve Bident unchecked. The mono blue player can definitely just run away with.
Yeah, so Black does do a really good job, I think, in the matchup of presenting like a multiple front attack. A lot of times post-board, as you said, with boarding in cards like Bident, Blue becomes this control deck where what they want to do is, present a Bident and one creature, make every creature a must-kill threat, which is actually pretty effective against the all-removal spell that Black brings here. What I like about the mono Black deck, though, is that they have Pack Rat still in the matchup. So while they're this control deck, they also sometimes they have this corner they can turn, where if Osyp's game plan is too slow or too grindy with Bident, Pieter will just make an army of Pack Rats.
If you're just joining us, round 3 of the Standard Open, Patrick Sullivan, Matthias Hunt. We're in Baltimore, Maryland. Game 2 underway between Osyp Lebedowicz and Pieter Tubergen.
Yep.
Pieter up a quick Pat Rat game 1 with Mono Black Devotion.
All right, both players trading lands on turn 1. Pieter ships a card to the bottom. Osyp has kept a significantly slower hand here. He has 2 islands on the play and no plays yet. It looks like he has at least a Mutavault and a Dissolve along with Nightveil Spectre. And we may see another quick Pack Rat game as the turn 2 play from Pieter is once again Pack Rat.
Yeah, these are the hands that Mono Blue gets that I'm not a huge fan of in the matchup. I feel like you need to get on the ground running. Also, when you're a little bit slower and more control-oriented, Desecration Demon can even run away with the game pretty easily. Mono Blue doesn't have a lot of great answers to that card as well.
All right, yeah, Osyp's play is the Nightveil Spectre. Pieter's going to go ahead and Thought Seize at Osyp. Osyp has a pair of Mutavaults, another Nightveil, a Dissolve, and a Domestication.
And this Thought Seize is great for Osyp, as it means there's no rat being made by Pieter this turn.
Yeah, so Pieter will be able to get rid of, well, a Dissolve, or maybe even he has to get rid of the Domestication if he wants to keep his rat around now.
I think that if he has no way to stop this Domestication from happening next turn, he has to just take that.
And that's what he did. Pieter had no third land, which is why he made the Thought Seize play. Looks like he kept the hand on the strength of a turn 2 Pack Rat and is getting a little punished for it.
Yeah.
Nightveil Spectre hits a Devour Flesh. No progress there, but Osyp now has a choice between leaving up Dissolve and casting a second Nightveil. I think he's probably will just double up on Nightveils.
Makes the most sense to me. If Pieter draws a third land, he doesn't have to cast any spells for the rest of the game. So Dissolve's pretty poor in this spot.
Right, and the third land was drawn by Pieter, so he has a chance to catch up here. It's probably too late for him to start making Pack Rats. He's gonna have to just start killing things, if possible.
Yeah. The other upside about playing the game this way, as Osyp has done, is now it makes it more likely that your Nightveil Specters start hitting swamps, which then start turning on some of the other cards. Again, remember, Osyp's got a Devour Flesh underneath that Nightveil Spectre. If you can find a black mana off of Pieter's deck, then you can actually start casting Devour Flesh.
Really true. So the third card played there is a swamp for Pieter. It's not much relief to him. If you look what he has an ultimate price. He has a pair of Gray Merchants and a Nightveil Spectre. So he has a lot of uncastable cards. I think he was really just hoping to Pack Rat this game.
Yep. Feel that way too. And Pieter is still going to go on the Pack Rat plan, it looks like.
Yeah, swing for 4. Puts Pieter down to 12 and 2 cards for Osyp. That's going to be a Swamp that you had mentioned and now a Gray Merchant. And still in combat, Pieter's going to try to destroy that Nightveil Spectre, but that's going to be met with a Dissolve.
Yeah, if he wanted to run that play, I think he needed to do it on his main phase. And now Osyp can actually Devour Flesh the Pack Rat, and now he's really far ahead.
Well, the problem is that Pieter knew about the Dissolve.
Yeah.
So if he wants to kill that Nightveil Spectre, you're absolutely right. He needed to do it on his turn. And now he's down 2 Nightveils, down 2 lands, and has no board.
And if Osyp finds a second black mana, that Gray Merchant's for 8 right now. So
that's true. He actually is quite devoted to black. And we see ultimate price, a 4th land drawn for Pieter, so he can cast Nightveil or Desecration Demon. Neither is a particularly enticing play. He's going to go for the Demon, which I imagine will just eat a Mutavault.
Yeah, if Osyp doesn't find a better answer to it, I assume that's just going to be Mutavault bait.
Or maybe even we see a Frostburn Weird drawn for Osyp. Yeah, a number of ways that he can push the Nightveils through. And we will see the line he wants to go on. I would have to imagine something's getting sacked. And he's going to use Mutavault to activate itself. This gives him the option, if he hits the swamp, to go ahead and cast that Gray Merchant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a swing will put Pieter down to 9. And there we go, Swamp and Mutavault even. And he's going to make Swamp, and he's going to cast Pieter's Gray Merchant for 8. That'll put Pieter down to 1. Osyp up to 28. And a pretty decisive game board for Osyp.
Certainly, yes. And another Mutavault hanging underneath that Night Veil Spectre, which is another thing that can be used to tap the Desecration Demon. So these Night Veil Spectres doing a lot of work here. Not just 2/3 flyers, don't be deceived.
Yeah, Pieter down to 1 life. Does not have another land, and it looks like we'll be headed to a 3rd game.
Yeah, I would struggle to see how he's supposed to remove all the threats off the board right now.
Yeah, at 1 life he does have to remove all the threats, off the board, including the Night Veil with a Mutavault under it. Just was a little far behind.
Yeah. And this is one of the weaknesses of Mono Black Devotion. They often just play 1 spell a turn Magic. So if you get out in front of them, it's hard for them to catch up.
He's going to pass the turn back. He's going to make Osyp swing for the win. So we'll see that happen.
I imagine we're going to see Osyp play a Mutavault and try to run the same play as he did before.
Mutavault played, activated, sacked to Demon.
We need the following players for a booster draft. Steven
And
Trotty,
he's going to go ahead and swing the team. And that'll be good. We are on to game 3.
Lael Sharp, and
So
Steven
what we've
Hitchett.
seen so far
Again,
Pieter
Steven
do
Trotty,
here is game 1 he went turn 2 Packer on the play and just went all in on Pack Rat. And it looked like game 2 he was trying to run that strategy back. He was trying to do it on the draw. So if he had, and he only did it with a 2-land hand. He was punished because he didn't hit his 3rd land. But if he had the 3rd land, do you like the strategy still?
It depends what else his hand allows him to do, honestly. If he can play a removal spell game for a little while, maybe he's better off just curving out with removal into Desecration Demon. But that's also very challenging for the mono blue deck to answer. His hand might have not been constructed in any other way to allow him to do anything else. He can make rats for a while. If he draws Heroes Downfalls and Doomblades rather, maybe that can pick apart critical pieces of Osyp's strategy. You know, Night Veil Spectre that's providing devotion, a Master of Ways that's still in Osyp's deck. You know, but Pieter's hand didn't look like it gave him many other paths.
No, it looked like he could only Pack Rat with that hand. Now, I think the interesting part is that on the play, I like Pack Ratting against Mono Blue. I feel like if Pieter has a turn 2 Pack Rat and Osyp has a turn 3 Night Veil, if Pieter's on the play, I certainly favor the Pack Rat player there. But with Osyp on the play, I'm not sure if I like the mono black situation anymore. You know, Osyp will get that hidden with Night Veil. He'll start stealing cards. It's possible he can actually recover from that board.
Yeah. I'm also, you know, the more that I watch these games, I'm sort of not a fan of Thoughtseize in the matchup post-board. It feels like the blue deck is a lot about aggression and tempo in the matchup. That's the role it needs to take, especially when you're supplementing a removal. Or, sorry, when they're trying to fight through the mono black deck's removal, rather. And taking one piece of the puzzle, unless you're getting the Thassa in an otherwise creature-dense hand, just doesn't seem very good. And drawing Thoughtseizes and taking 2 points of damage doesn't seem worth the cost.
Yeah, I think the appeal of Thoughtseize in the matchup is that it costs 1, so that Pieter doesn't make very many plays on that affect the board until turn 3. He can have a turn 2 Pack Rat, but you know, if he can get a Thoughtseize in his opening hand, it's probably fine. But certainly after about turn 3, the black deck is tapping out every turn for their threats. Fitting in Thoughtseize actually can become difficult.
Right. For example, I like Thoughtseize more against Mono Red because Desecration Demon or even Gray Merchant is just game over a lot of the time. So all you want to do is keep the board as stable as possible to engineer that board state. But the Mono Blue Devotion deck can beat those cards. So then the damage you're taking is a real cost.
All right, and we're on to game 3. Pieter is on the play this time. And so if you're not Thoughtseizing, I mean, do you just board in like more Lifebane zombies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just try to beat down.
All right. So we see lands exchanged on the play. Pieter, turn 2, does he have the Pack Rat for the 3rd game? He does not, so he'll pass back to Osyp.
Got to be a sigh of relief there.
Yeah, it looks like he does have the Lifebane zombie in his hand, though. So he has a choice now between Night Veil and Lifebane, and presumably will be choosing the Night Veil Spectre. Or go ahead and Lifebane zombie. He's going to check out to see whether
He want to know what's up.
Yeah, so we see Island. Night Veil, Bident, Domestication, Dissolve, Thassa. Quite a loaded hand for Osyp. No early game pressure, but all the cards you could really want late game.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of Dissolve in this matchup. If the mono black player is on Pack Rat, then it's clearly very bad. And it just feels like it's hard to leave up that much mana.
Yeah, looking at Osyp's hand, I don't think he'll ever leave up 3 for this game, unless he's already very far ahead.
Yeah, it's way down the line, if ever, that he's able to do something like that.
All right, so he has some options this turn. He has a Thassa and Night Veil Spectre, which both he can make. He could also leave up Dissolve if he cared to. His draw for the turn was Cloudfin Raptor, something that won't be played this turn, but might be snuck in at some later point. I imagine we'll see a Night Veil.
Seems likely.
He's gonna go for the long game. I think the advantage to hitting Thassa here, so he cast the Thassa, is I think he wants to scry toward another land. He doesn't have a 4th land yet, and that's pretty important to his game plan right now.
Additionally, the odds that Night Veil Spectre just dies is so high that it's really positive tempo for Pieter to just use a removal spell that turn. This forces Pieter to use his mana in other ways.
Yeah, so we do see a Desecration Demon made turn 4 for Pieter, so now he's on the beatdown plan. Just play 2 creatures, push through with kill spells. Osyp scrying to the bottom, draws. He has missed the land on both draws. And now his options are Dissolve, Night Veil Spectre, Judge's Familiar, Cloudfin Raptor. And one thing you said, Dissolve, not really an option
Yeah,
here.
Dissolve's off the board. I mean, Osyp's dead in 2 turns, so he's got to start casting to the board a little bit.
Right, his choice is Night Veil and take 9, or he can, he could play. Well, Night Veil's the only creature that can block Lifebane Zombie. He could maybe play out some 1-drops and fog the Desecration Demon for a turn.
Yeah, there's the issue of what's the long-term plan against Desecration Demon. That's the real struggle here.
Right, I think if you're Osyp, you take 9 this turn and really hope to hit your land. He's gonna go with the double 1-drop strategy, which that may be, there's some value to that one too. So he's just look like he's gonna try to chump block his way to the 4th land and then start catching up with powerful cards.
Yeah. But Osyp really needs to find a land drop, and even then, he's not out of the woods here.
Well, yeah, it depends how much follow-up Pieter has. If Pieter, say, has another Desecration Demon or something like that, it becomes a pretty impossible board for Osyp.
On boards like this, it's really hard to beat Desecration Demon in the long term, unless you somehow stick Master of Waves, and that's a really hard thing to do against mono black.
All right, Pieter swinging both creatures, puts Osyp down to 8, and fortunately for him, there's no follow-up play from Pieter. Osyp can obviously expect some removal spells to come out.
But if he's not playing additional stuff, it means his hand's probably removal or Grey Merchants, neither of which is great for Osyp.
Yeah, Grey Merchants. The threat of Grey Merchants almost means that Osyp has to do things like cast this domestication immediately. He has to take black mana symbols off the table for Pieter. And you're absolutely right. We see Pieter flicking through his hand. It looks like a pair of Grey Merchants. So once he hits 5, that's a 2-turn clock for Osyp.
Osyp's not in a position to race, and he's not in a position to play a grindy game either, so really hard for him to take a path here.
Yeah, the Dissolve may be helpful. Actually, if he casts the Domestication this turn on Lifebane, he actually can attack with Thassa this turn, or attempt to at the very least. And he's going to swing the whole team. And if you're Pieter, you probably Doomblade something just so you don't take the Thassa hit. And that will be a Doomblade on Cloudfin Raptor. So what once looked to be 7 damage will now be 1, as Pieter will go to 19.
And if Pieter had, I believe he had Devour Flesh in his hand. Is that the case? No, it's just...
I think it's a pair of Grey
Oh,
Merchants.
okay, and 2 Specters.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if he had Edict there, it would have been a good spot for him to Edict himself in response to that Domestication, but I believe his hand is just creatures.
Yep, and Osyp almost certain to throw away a creature to that Desecration Demon. That Domestication has stolen Lifebane Zombie. You see that card over there. It's one of the most influential cards, I think, in the mono blue sideboard. And And Pieter will downfall his own life bane. And now go to attacks with his demon. If you're Osyp, you have to sacrifice to this guy, otherwise you're dead to any gray merchant for the rest of the game. It seems like you probably can't fight over that, right?
Well, I don't know what his plan is to beat Gray Merchant by losing creatures every turn, you know?
Right.
Again, it's just the rock in the hard place here.
He may not have a game plan.
It's hard for him to race or outgrind Pieter in this spot, so.
Yeah, I mean, his plan has got to revolve around, well, maybe you take 6 here. Then you can Bident for a card. Hope Pieter doesn't kill you. Sacrifice to it, and then you can start playing creatures while holding up dissolves. And there's still more that has to happen here. Demon is so strong in the matchup.
Yeah. It is another card, you know, we talk about pack rats so much in the matchup, and for good reason. But Desecration Demon, a fast Desecration Demon, especially supplemented by removal, can also bury them on a blue player very fast.
Yeah. All right, 5th land drawn for Osyp. He's elected to draw it as opposed to scrying it to the bottom. The hard thing is that five's not a big enough number. His hand is all 3s, 3-drops, and plus 3-drops and then some. And I like this play. He played Nightveil Spectre, so that will help him get some damage through. That pushes 6 onto Pieter, and no swamp drawn for Pieter, so Osyp is still alive. It was a hero's downfall though, so that'll put Osyp even farther behind.
There's not a lot of draws here that aren't a land or a kill spell.
Right. He's hoping that Pieter draws another Nightveil, or I suppose an Underworld Connections. That's not even a particularly good draw. You know, that's not a great one.
Yeah.
And
now Osyp is in the abyss. I mean, this is.
Yep, Desecration Demon will have to be chumped every turn. And he has a scry. He can choose to draw. I think if it's a land, he wants it. He's going to go ahead. All right, he's going to go with Judge's Familiar. It looks like Familiar and Nightveil will be my guess here. So then he can continue to pressure.
Yep.
We can swing Thassa. Pieter's down to 8. We're going on 8. There's some hope. Osyp's still dead to a land. But so far, that hasn't come back to haunt him.
You're really seeing the power of Thassa in this matchup, too. It's by far Mono Blue's best card.
Yeah, I joke, you know, when I ask you, like, what's the best card in this matchup? And the joke with Mono Blue is that in every single matchup, the answer is Thassa. Like, it's just the best card. And Pieter did hit the swamp there, so looks like as long as he casts the Gray Merchant, that should be good.
And I'm sure Osyp is going to be really thrilled about this post-combat Gray Merchant after Pieter has made him go through the motions.
I mean, he could wrap it. No, there's no answer.
Just making Osyp tank. You can see beads of sweat pouring down his forehead, clutching his knuckle against his, just trying to go through what are the permutations of my draws, what are my outs, what am I playing around here?
This is one of those plays that I think from Pieter's side is like a fundamentally solid play.
Yeah.
But well, I mean, if you think about the specifics of the situation, it's not like there are no cards at 1 blue that save him, you know, in the format.
Let's keep the camera on Osyp here. Keep the camera on Osyp.
All right. All right, there we go. Pieter wins 2-1 over Osyp Lebedowicz. Pieter will move on to 3-0. Osyp down to 2-1. And there.
For those of you who do not know Osyp as well as I do, he is a man who is occasionally salty in defeat. He's generally